based on science.
Hey everyone, Matt Thomas here. Thanks for watching. So this is my fourth video in my Neuroeducation 101 video series. And the purpose of the video series is to share information about how the brain learns and to see how we can apply that information to influence student success. If you haven't seen the previous three videos, please watch those first because the information that's in this video is built upon those previous three videos. This information is about lesson planning for student success. And if you recall, the previous two videos were about how to create an effective learning environment. Both are very, very important. Creating an effective learning environment is so important because our students will look forward to our class, they'll feel valued, they'll come to class without hopefully having those in-class distractions, and they'll thrive in that environment, right? They're ready to learn. But with that though, we need to deliver an effective lesson plan because I'm sure we've had teachers that, it's a great classroom environment. We feel, comfortable in the class. But maybe there wasn't a lot of learning going on, right? Maybe the lesson plans, there was a lot of downtime, there was a lot of time to get distracted. Or on the other side, maybe we've had teachers that have really, tight lesson plans, very strong lesson plans. But the environment isn't always the best, right? We don't always like being in the class for whatever reason. Maybe, the teacher yells at the students a lot or takes out whatever the teacher's feeling on the students, whatever. And so we want to have both. It's so very important to have a great and effective learning environment and strong lesson plans. Let's get into it. So first, let's review why effective lesson planning is so important. Textbooks support what we teach, not how we teach though. We know that textbooks are purposely written to be kind of dry. They're purposely written to be very general. And so it's our job as teachers to present these effective and engaging lesson plans. So real quick review on one of the previous videos. When you're putting together your lesson unit, you want to make sure these 4 steps are involved, right? The brain learns most efficiently if these are included. If you have some sort of curiosity builder, right? You connect your information to the student's previous experiences, some sort of prior knowledge in there. There are patterns in what you're teaching because the brain learns very efficiently in patterns. And you have to have some type of real world application, some type of opportunity to apply that knowledge to create real world value with our students. That's why project-based learning is so important. So what you don't want to include in your lessons, busy work. Do not include busy work because the students know it's busy work. You're going to lose authenticity as a teacher. You're going to lose credibility as a teacher if you include busy work that you don't see as important and the students won't see as important. Also, don't just put assignments on Canvas and walk away. Students nowadays, there was a time when all right, you're giving it on campus, I can do it. Now, not so much. Students want us to teach. They want it to engage. They want to feel valued. They want us to communicate with them and share the knowledge in an engaging way. So, that being said, let's get into this. Dr. Scott Boland's research is all about finding that perfect learning arc, if you will. So I call it the learning arc. It's the time in your brain where you're taught something and you're enjoying it and you're motivated and you're like, yeah, this is it. But then you get to a point where you feel like you've mastered it. And if you don't move on to the next thing, you'll start to get distracted. It's like learning a song. Let's say you're playing the guitar and you're learning the same song over and over again. There's a point where you're like, I feel pretty good. Can I move on? And if you're still playing the same song over and over again, you're going to lose interest. That's the learning arc. So there's a high correlation between familiarity of information and how much you enjoy it. Our job as teachers is to find that point and then move on to the next thing, right? We all know, we can feel when our students are getting wiggly. By that time, it's too late. We went too far. We went over something too much. We need to get to where that fine point, all right, I think you guys got it. Let's go on to the next thing. That's how we need to create our lessons. So our lesson plans need to include these 3 things, possible 4th thing. So first, there needs to be a starter in our lessons. And this is every lesson plan that you do. You need to create some sort of starter. It's designed to spark curiosity and lead to interest, right? Curiosity can be fleeting. I've got a video coming up strictly about the science behind curiosity. It could be a few seconds, it could be a few minutes when it comes to curiosity, but we want to get our students curious and then connect them to our, what we're trying to teach, right? Continue that interest. We start class with a starter, then we go to what's called a middler. What the middler is that middle point between the starter and the main point. You don't start your class with something engaging and then get to the main assignment, right? We're missing that bridge, that step making the information accessible to our students. Then we get to the main part of the class. The main part of the class is what you want your students to walk out doing, like, hey, today we wrote an argumentative essay, or today we had fun, debates or speeches or Socratic seminar, whatever it is. That's the main part of the lesson. And then here's the optional. You can have an optional finisher. Now, I know in education, a finisher is always taught like a ticket out the door or some way to close the lesson up. But according to the brain, you do not need a finisher in class because we know learning doesn't always happen within that 53 minutes. Sometimes it takes our brain time to process the information, to connect with other things. It may be 2 hours later that our students go, oh my gosh, I finally get what he was trying to say. So I'm not saying that the finisher isn't bad. It's not bad to have a ticket out the door. I'm just saying, based strictly on how the brain learns and processes, you don't have to tie every lesson up with some type of ticket out the door because we do know that learning continues to happen, and some lessons don't tie up in one class. So you definitely need the first three for sure. Finisher is a good optional thing. If you have time, you just don't need it based on how the brain works. So here we go. Let's talk about the starter. I'm going to spend most of the time on the starter because this is the most important part of the lesson. It's the part that gets the students involved, gets them focused on what you're doing. And this is the one I want to spend most of the time on, at least talking about. The rest will go a little bit faster. So the first thing is the starter. Now, it's very important to teach bell to bell. What the reason being is the bell, when the bell rings, that's a natural like cue, right? We don't have to re-get the students focused because the bell does it. So as soon as the bell rings, you either start talking, or in my case, I would use music. I'm a big heavy metal guy. And so as soon as the bell rang, I would start a song. It was the same song every day, same 30 seconds. It was my students' cue to get out their pencil and get out their paper. I would always have the instructions on the board. That's when I would take a roll, was within that 30 seconds. And then once the music stopped, the students they all knew when the music was going to stop. As soon as it stopped, I started talking. Again, that's a natural cue. If the bell rings and you walk around for a few minutes, the students are still off task. Now you have to restart them. Like the bell is so important to start when the bell is. When you do work, when you whatever your starter is, don't call it a bell ringer. Don't call it a warm-up. Don't call it bell work, because the students can see that as busy work. Whatever you include in your lesson is a very valuable part of the lesson. You want your students to see that. So treat the starter as part of the lesson because it is, right? If you do a daily writing prompt, I would not do a separate daily writing prompt. If it does, I wouldn't do a daily writing prompt if it doesn't follow what you're teaching for the day. I see many times, sometimes in credential programs, we're taught to start class with a daily writing prompt and then get into your lesson. But if the students don't see the daily writing prompt connecting with the lesson, they won't treat it as much value, especially if that daily writing prompt isn't gone over or talked about a lot. So I have 4 subjects here on the screen. You can see English, math, history, and science. The starter, again, the most important part of your lesson, 5 to 10 minutes, right? It's intended to spark curiosity, continue to lead interest, start the class, and then move on. So in English, it could be starting class with a story that's relevant for teenagers. You don't want to tell a story. I've told this story many times. I was at a conference once where a person was talking about the importance of quick writes, which they're great, but he was telling us a 10-minute quick write about how he was playing hide and seek with his daughter and he couldn't find his daughter for 10 minutes, blah, blah, blah. At the time, I didn't have a daughter. I didn't have a child. It didn't matter to me. I lost interest. Your story should be 2 minutes at the most. So maybe you tell a relevant quick write. I would tell, if I'm teaching, say, Scarlet Letter, I could start class with a T on my chest and say, hey guys, let me tell you about the time I got arrested for shoplifting when I was 14. And I tell them the 2-minute story. That's definitely going to get their attention right away. You could tell it if you're having quick writes with your students, make sure you answer the quick write first, right? Tell them a story that's creating a connection with the students. Then ask the question. Then have them write on it. You could start class with doing journal writing or sometimes just venting time. Hey guys, what are you feeling in your life? Just go ahead and write. Let me know at the top of the page if you don't want me to read it, whatever. You could start a class with a short video. If I'm doing teaching Hamlet, I'll start the class with the Simpsons version of Hamlet and have them watch that first. Takes 4 minutes. I'm really big on introductory games. I do a lot of author games. If it like Edgar Allan Poe, if we're studying Poe, I do this very interactive, fun, creative game with it. I've talked about it in other videos. Please watch my videos. Great ways to be in class. You can do vocab review, grammar, word searches, and rebus puzzles are great if you're introducing new vocab. You could start class with having some fun debates. That's English. Now, I'm going to go over math, history, and science a little bit with the preface that I'm not a math, history, or science teacher. I'm an English teacher. So take these more for maybe not specifics, though it could be, but more for like what my purpose is. Like what's my purpose for telling you these things, right? Don't take it specifically. But if you're a math teacher, start class. If you're teaching a formula that day, start class with a math rap about that formula. Or share math memes. I knew a math teacher that did this. His students loved it. He would start class once a week with some math memes. It was a fun way to get into math. The students now are laughing because they're able to enjoy math when they come into class. Review games from the previous lesson. Always have some type of gamification there. Watch a cool math video. There are some ninja math videos out there that I can't seem to find, but I swear I saw someone using them in teaching. It was great. Build Legos, use Legos. Start class with a bunch of Legos and have the students build something for the day, especially if you're a geometry teacher. You can do some STEM building. You can do some spatial IQ builders. I knew a math teacher that used cubes a lot in class to get his students interested. If you're history, you could start with one of those, who is this and what is his or her relationship with something. I've done a video on that. Please watch that video. You could do the starter of what is this person thinking. I've done a video on that. A picture of, I think I have Stalin, and he's pondering something. And you can ask the students, what do you think he's thinking of right now? And then give the scenario of what's going on. You could dress like a whatever. I have that in my video. Dress like a Viking, and then of course, you would have to be teaching stuff about Vikings, but spark that conversation with students. Students love that. Start them with a quick write. Like, where would you like to explore in life, especially if you're a geography teacher? Do a fun history video. Do a historical figure intro video, like what I do with the English class. If you're a science teacher, begin with an experiment, right? Say, hey guys, we're gonna do an experiment, and then just boom, start with something. Get the students like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Do an intro game, a science intro game. Take the students on a virtual field trip. Something that sparks their interest, 5 to 10 minutes. I know that's the longest part of the video. I'll move on quickly to the other things. Okay, so that's intended to spark interest. Then now is your middler. So the middler is really 10 to 15 minutes. It's the part where once you've got the students excited, now you get them focused on their stuff so that you can now deliver your main part of the instruction. It could be taking notes. All right, guys, I told them a story about something, a time when I learned a lesson in life. They did a quick write on it. Now I'm going to have them write notes about how to write an autobiographical narrative. It could be reading a story or articles, right? You set up something, some information, you ask some quick write, now you're going to read a story based on that information or an article. You could be teaching new vocabulary. That could be where you do your math or science instruction. Yeah, 10 to 15 minutes. Any more, the students will start to get distracted. Maybe you're introducing a new part of a project or modeling what it'll look like, or maybe you're using that time to fill out a graphic organizer. Again, this should be 10 to 15 minutes, no longer than that, to now set up for the next part of the lesson. So this next part is the main part of the lesson. So this would be, the longest part of class, 20 to 25 minutes. It's where, if your students were to be asked right after they leave your class, if you're someone asked like, hey, what'd you do in English class, or what'd you do in math class? This would really be what they would say. Oh, we wrote a short story, or oh, we did the Pythagorean theorem, or whatever, right? This is the main part they're going to really focus on. And this could be, you're reading a story, you're using vocab. Let's say you set up vocab throughout the day, and now they're using that vocab to write a story. You're really creating whatever you went, over in class, whether it's practicing the math questions or, writing a story or so. If you're doing group work, this would be where you'd have the students get in groups and work on their project. Maybe you were setting things up, and then you had them fill out a graphic organizer, and then they, applied what they used the graphic organizer for. Maybe they did gallery walk or four corners here. Maybe you just take the students out of class. Change of location, change of environment is so important and such a powerful thing to do. So finally we get to step 4, which is the optional finisher. And a finisher, I know it's promoted in education a lot because it sounds good, but based on how the brain works and makes meaning of things and learns, you don't need a finisher, right? I know it sounds good to tie everything together, like how do you know your students learn the information? Sometimes they don't learn the information in 48 minutes or 53 minutes. That's not how the brain processes things. That's not how learning always works. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, and it's okay. Sometimes lessons don't tie up at the end there. They need to continue for the next day. So it's not a bad thing to do. You're not hurting learning at all by doing some type of ticket out the door, some way to close the class. You just don't need it as importantly as everything else, right? So, but you could have a ticket out the door. You could do some type of assessment check. You could do a gallery walk or 4 corners. I've got some lesson plan examples coming up here. You've read a story, now you have them answer questions about it. They wrote a story, now you're having some people share. They're beginning their math homework. Maybe they're planning, their group project if they're starting one the next day. Let's look at some example lesson plans. Now, I'm starting with English. If you're a math teacher, skip ahead to math. I think I go English, math. I think it's history, then science, or the other way around. But you can skip forward. But I'll go fast with these. So if I were doing an English class, so you want to make sure you have a starter, a middler, a main, and an optional finisher. Keep the class flowing. That's what you always want. So an example of a lesson plan, I'm going to tell a story, my personal story first, right? Then ask the students a quick write. If I were doing autobiographical narrative, I would tell a story about a time where I learned a valuable lesson. I would then have them take autobiographical notes, how to write one. Then I would have them write their own autobiographical narrative based on a lesson that they learned in life. And then if we had time, then I would ask for volunteers to share it out. A second one, if I was teaching Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven and Annabel Lee, I would start with a fun, interactive Poe life game, basically explaining Poe's life in a fun way. The students loved this game. Then we would watch The Simpsons. The version of The Raven goes 4 minutes. Students enjoy it, especially when they read The Raven for the first time and they're kind of confused. Then we read and analyze the poem. That would be the main part, both poems. And then I ask them at the end, is it creepy or is it romantic? Especially with Annabel Lee, that gives a great conversation to end class if we have time. Third lesson plan, if I'm doing a novel, this is how I would start Fahrenheit 451. We know the novel is about, banning books, etc., amongst other things. And I would start with some funny things that have been banned around the world. I would explain, like, hey, here's some funny things that these people ban, whatever. Things have been banned around the world. Get students to laugh, get them interested. Then we have one more serious conversation about banning and censorship. Then when I do novels, I always have students represent characters. They don't have to do anything, but I'm like, hey, who wants to play the role of whatever? And they're like, yeah, we have fun with that. Then we read just certain sections of a novel. Whenever I teach a novel, I teach the sections of the novel that support what I'm trying to teach. We don't read the whole thing. And then at the very end, we always watch the little excerpt of what we just read because it reinforces, what we did, what the reading is. So now let's get to math. So there's an example of how I would lesson plan English. Let's get to math. Now, here's the thing about math. Again, I'm not a math teacher, so I'm trying to give examples of lesson planning based on what other math teachers have done and based on me as a teacher who tries to be innovative, creative, and fun. I will say this, if you've seen my video on best ways to teach math based on mathematicians' perspective, they do suggest that we kind of have to revise, look at how math is taught, right? Maybe revise how we teach math. And I will say too that there's been studies that have shown that giving the test first on a Monday, having the students, get most of the answers wrong, and then start your instruction that way will lead to increased test scores. But anyway, that being said, let's go for it. So my first lesson plan example, if I were teaching math, I would show an algebra wrap. So I would take whatever formula I'm trying to do, show a wrap based on that formula. Then I would teach the formula. I have the students practice, with some example questions. And then I would have the students create their own wrap about the formula. And it just reinforces that learning. It's fun, and maybe you have extra credit if students present it in class. So that may take a couple days to do, right? It's not, it's maybe not a one-day lesson, but the students would love doing it. Lesson plan 2, I know there's these Math Ninja videos out there where they show shadows and they're doing like the area of a triangle based on ninja shadows or something. So I would show that ninja math video if I could ever find it. Then I would take my students outside, change of environment, look at shadows. and literally look at the shape of them and how it is. Then I'd come back to class, have the students take notes on the area of a triangle, practice that, and then begin the homework. That's how I would do that. Another math example, I might start with Legos, having the students build something based on patterns or coloring patterns, just for a few minutes, and display them all around, and then lecture on patterns, equations, and graphs. Practice the information, and then begin the homework. That's how I would do math. Again, not being a math teacher. Science, again, I'm not a science teacher. Just take my, best intentions, right? Maybe not exactly what I say, but what I'm trying to, put forth. So if I wrote one lesson, I might, have the students predict what will happen when this happens, or whatever it is. Like, hey guys, please, take a minute to write down what you think is going to happen when I do this. Then I would show them, how to build one of those safe balloon rockets. And then we'd go outside on the football field and we'd build balloon rockets, and maybe have a contest to see who balloon rocket flies the farthest. I did take that lesson from a colleague of mine who used to do that, and the students loved that. Another lesson plan, I might have the students start off by taking notes on photosynthesis, then let students choose what seed they will plant. Then we go outside and plant a seed. That's, create a garden, if you will, and then visit that garden weekly. Like, walk out and be like, hey guys, let's check out your plants. Maybe a lesson plan 3 example, I might begin chemistry with some chemistry or some science memes. Then intro, new science vocabulary, or review some terms. Then do science Pictionary and have some whiteboards and have, students try to figure out what the terms are based on science Pictionary. And then, of course, beginning an identification worksheet, and so on and so forth. Yeah, that might be how I teach a science class. Finally, if I were a history teacher, I might start with, I did a video on a great way to begin the history class, showing a picture. Who is this, and what's his relationship with Shakespeare? I think that was the example I gave. And then that could lead, if I'm showing like a certain event, I can show a fun video pertaining to that person or an event, a short 4 or 5 minute clip of something, then take notes on the person or event, and then read whatever chapter or article we need to about that day. Second lesson plan example, I could use a Star Wars crawler to give my agenda. If you're a Star Wars person, you know what I'm talking about. The very beginning of movies, they use this crawler to explain like what's going on in the movie. You could use that to give your daily agenda out. You can find them on the internet. They're very easy to get. Then you could do one of those intro person life game, like what I did with Poe. Create one about whoever you're talking about for the day, then read about the events of the person, and then do a virtual field trip of that area where the person is. You could, just go online. There's lots of those there. If you're talking about a certain area, an event or a person, go to that area virtually with the students. Great way to end class. Third example, I might start with, hey, let's play the what did they used to eat game. And so I could show various foods that maybe people from the 1400s ate, and the students would have to decide if it was real or if it was not real. Just a fun way to start class. And then, or I could start with what is this person thinking right now? So you can find pictures of leaders who are just about to sign into war, and you could ask, what's this person thinking? Right when they're about to sign their country into war, and you could say there's no wrong answers, and then see what kind of fun you could have with people being like, oh, maybe he blah blah blah, coming up with some fun creative things that the leader's thinking about, or have more serious answers. Then talk about notes about, have the students take notes about motivation of war and why countries go to war, and maybe use that to read about certain wars and so on and so forth. So again, there's my examples of 4 different subjects and different ways to create lessons with them. Take what you will from them. Thanks for watching.